Welcome back. Today we're going to finally get started on building out our inventory system. This will be a multi-part video. I'm not sure how many parts yet, 4 or 5, maybe more. Inventories are complicated. But today we'll be setting it up and creating our main inventory and playing around with it. So first thing we got to do is we need to go to this rpgwebapi.saberdartstudios.com/docs/install and grab the 2019 0630. So new version for today. Got to have this one or you'll get some errors. Inventory fixes are in this one. So let's do what we always do. I've already downloaded it. And we're going to go into plugins. We're going to delete our plugin. And then we will come back, go to the plugins folder, right click, copy, and back to plugins and paste. That will give us the newest inventory system. Okay, and while that loads up, we will talk about inventory. So I'm logged into the console, hit management console. And you can see I've got this item library. I got to this by clicking on items. And this is basically where you define all of your items. So this is not items that exist in the world. It's like item templates, right? It's your definitions for the items. It's a list of all possible items definitions, but not the items themselves. It doesn't actually become an item until you connect it to a character inventory, and then that becomes an instance of that item. And so what we're going to do first, we are going to add a new item so we have 2 to play around with. And so I'm going to come over here, and we've got some icons from the previous inventory system. Here we go, icons. You see we've got this great sword, which we already have set up. If you don't have the great sword set up, then you will want to set it up. And what you'll do is you'll come here and do copy reference. Okay. And then you'll come back here, and if you didn't have the great sword, first of all, I'd go to item types and add this item type weapon. Okay. And we're going to add a new item type called currency. This is just a user-defined type. That's fine. Type. Yeah. Anyway, I don't care at this point. So now we have weapon and currency. So you want to create both of those. And then we can go back to items. And if you don't have the great sword, you'll want to add that. You want to hit add item and fill in the values. Here's what it looks like. I chose weapon as the weapon type, just putting in some default values here, weight, value. None of these really mean anything right now. We've got this item description. Eventually we'll make that be like a hover over. It's not stackable. It's not a use system. Here's where we would be pasting that thing that we copied. I'm just going to paste it here so you can see it. See? That's where we would have pasted that resource thing, and we're going to do that in a second. And this inventory system does support icons that are larger than 1 slot. So this one takes up 2 slot width and 2 slot height. So we're going to go and add a coin. Say they can stack mid-size 99 coins, I guess. Usable. Here's where you can put custom data. We use JSON because UE4 has a nice JSON parser in C++. is if you want an item mesh for it. We don't have one. A mesh for pickup if you need a different one. These three values, weapon after class, static mesh, and skeletal mesh, were added to work with the ARPG system on the marketplace. Yeah, we tried to use it. It wasn't a good idea. So that's why we've decided to make our own. And here's where we're going to paste in that value, but I'm going to show you that I'm grabbing it. So I'm going to go to coin, copy reference. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to paste in that texture icon. There you go. And this one's going to be a 1 slot. We're not using premium and free currency, and we're going to create it. So one of the things that's a little bit odd here, and I got to go back a step. Oh no, wait, nope, not here. Next, there's an odd thing later. So we got our item library, right? Well, now we got to go to our characters. You'll remember I'm using Future 3 here, and so we'll go to it. And this, you would think, would list the inventories. But unfortunately, it actually lists the inventory items and the inventories together in one screen. Eventually, I'm going to make one where we can just view the inventories. But what you'll have to do is go to Add Inventory, do a bag, and set your inventory size. Currently, there's a bit of an issue on inventory sizes. The only ones that are allowed right now are ones that are that have a integer-based square root. So you could use 4 for a 2x2, you could use 9 for a 3x3, 16 for a 4x4, 25 for a 5x5, etc. Soon that will be fixed, and I'll have some extra values here where you can define rows and columns that are not equal. But for now, we're going to create a bag 16. Now, when you do that, you will not see it in this list. Okay, and that's the part that's confusing, and I'll eventually fix. But you will see it after you add an item. So you're going to come in here and add probably the greatsword. If you don't have that, I'm adding the coin. Okay, slot number. 0 based. So we have size 16. That slots 0 through 15. If you put it in 16, it will crash. So we had the greatsword in, I believe, slot 0. It's too wide, so it takes up 0 and 1. So we're going to get the coin in slot 2. This is custom per instance data. This doesn't do a whole lot right now, but later when we build our per instance of an item stats, that's what we'll use. Okay, so this was in slot 0 and takes up 0, 1. It also takes up slots 4 and 5. And then this one's in slot 2 and only takes up slot 2. So you want to get it looking like this before we move on. And of course, you'll use whatever your test character is. And if you're wondering what your test character is, you can come down to the third-person game mode. And it's right here, debug character name. So whichever one you're using, get that set up. Make sure that you have, no, I can close that. Make sure that you have greatsword in slot 0 and coin in slot 2, and that you have the inventory has to be named bag. Well, it doesn't have to. You could pick a different name, but I'll show you later the name you have to match to that. And then inventory size, we're going to do 16 here, but you're also can use 9. It's not going to leave you a lot of room with a 2x2 greatsword. You could just use 16, choose 25, 36, whatever. Okay, so now we need to start building this out. The problem, of course, is that we have that existing inventory system from the starter project. Now, another thing to keep in mind, it is 6/30. It is June 30th, 2019. If you started on this tutorial after that date, much of what we're building here will already be done for you. So you'll be looking at stuff going, wait, I already have that, just so you know. Because as of 6/30, it's in the starter project. Actually, 6/22 and a couple of the previous versions may have had parts of it. But if you started long ago, back when we started over a year ago, you won't have this. And your project will more closely match my project. Okay, so we're going to be using our HUD. So I think we'll start there. And we need to define some variables here. So we're going to define show bag inventory. So this is just a bool so that we can toggle whether we want it to be visible or not, because you don't want the inventory visible all the time. And then we are going to create a bag inventory. And this is just a temporary reference. This won't be holding the bag inventory because we wouldn't put it in the HUD. But it's going to be a reference to it just so we don't have to keep grabbing it. And it should be of type OWS inventory. Okay. And then at some point we may want to be able to drag this inventory around. So we need to keep track of the X and the Y of where the inventory window is. And to start with, we're going to put it at 20X and 200Y. Okay, so here in the HUD already, we've got this get the owning player character, and so we only continue if that's valid, and then we've got this render the floating damage system, and we draw this text for the XP, so we're going to do this after that. And we're basically going to say, okay, if we need to show the bag inventory, then we want to make sure that the bag inventory is valid, because the HUD could start before it gets set up. So it's important to do this. It's basically stopping it at the first few frames. And then we're going to use a little trick here where we know that this thing keeps getting called every frame. And so we'll let it fail the first frame. But when it fails, instead of notifying us, we're going to use, grab this owning player character, get HUD inventory from name. And this is going to be on the fail. So it is not valid. And here's where we put in that name, one of the places. So bag, got to make sure that matches. And then when we get it, we'll set our reference. So what'll happen here is the first time through when the bag inventory is not valid, it'll follow the is not valid, put it in here, and then the next frame through, it of course will be valid. And we can do what we really wanted to do, which was render interactive. Okay, this one's not working yet. This is using locked slot groups. So make sure you choose the render interactive inventory grid. I may end up deleting that other one. It was for another project. Okay, so then we'll drag the bag inventory into the inventory. We'll drag inventory X. Let's give ourselves a little more room. And we'll drag inventory Y. That's where to draw it at. The empty slot texture is darken alpha 30. Set that to whatever you want. And then we have this anchor point system. I'm not 100% sure all these are working yet. Still working on this, but works similar to how it works in UMG. And so we're just going to use top left. I know that one works. Not sure about the others. They may. Okay. We're doing a inventory system where stuff can take up multiple slots. So it wouldn't really make sense to have huge spacing between them. So I think we're going to go with something small like 2 pixels, just enough to see it. 0 is allowed too if you wanted to, but it might make it a little bit harder for people to figure out where to place it. But if you're looking for just like that, you know, no slot system where you can drag it around in it, 0 might be interesting. Our icon width is going to be 32 by 32, and we're doing 4 by 4. Eventually these last two are going to go away because, like I said before, you're going to define them out on the management console. But for now, you do have to manually put in these numbers to match what you put. So if you put 16, you got to put 4, 4 here. If you put 9, you got to put 3, 3. If you put 25, you got to put 5, 5. Okay, so that's looking pretty good for rendering our inventory. The problem here is that nothing's going to set the bag inventory to true. It's going to start false. It's going to stay false, never going to get shown. So that's one of the things we've got to take a look at. So let's do that. We're going into our third-person player controller. And there's a couple things we got to do here. So we don't want this old show inventory widget. So we're dumping it. Item library is still fine. Rest of that should still be fine. I'm going to give this a comment. Show character sheet. Okay, so we're going to come down here. And what we want to do, I have learned, this is bad, do not do this. Do not. You'll never find them. Don't put letters in it. Use proper bindings. So we're going to go into our preference, project settings, and input. Again, if you started more recently on this, you're already going to have this. But I'm going to add an action mapping for toggle inventory, and I'm going to set it to I. If you're having trouble getting this working, it may be because you didn't delete that other spot that was already using the I, and this is of course why in the future we will not drop keybinds directly into blueprints. Okay, going back here, toggle inventory. So we did that. Grab our do once, and we'll grab our flip-flop. We're going to use the flip-flop a little bit different this time. So we're actually going to create, let's see here. Okay, we're going to do enable click events. Oops, we want set. And we're going to put that here. And we're going to send A and B to it. And that seems kind of odd. Why are we having the flip-flop on A go here and on B go here? Because all we're really using it for is for this toggleable is A. So on A it'll be true. On B it will be false. And then we need to get our HUD. And we need to cast to our HUD. And I'm going to make that pure because we know what the type is. You're never going to use a HUD other than our HUD. And then we are going to set show bag inventory. So this is how we get it set. I'm going to drag from here. So again, what's going to happen is that when it's A, meaning when you first toggle it, show bag inventory goes to true, enable click events goes to true. When you do it again, they get set to false. And finally, we need our set UI mode. And we're going to use, again, we're just going to drag this. So it's either setting them all to true or all to false as we toggle. And we're going to call this toggle inventory. Okay. And we need another thing here. We're going to break our rule right away on this left mouse button. This is just a way to make sure that we turn our rotation system back on. Okay, so I need to create a function. I think I'm going to show you what this does without it so that you can get a better idea of what we're fixing. I think that'll make more sense, just in case you run into this issue. Okay, so now I'm opening up our third-person character with abilities, and we're in our event graph. And what we're going to do is we want to go to our inventory graph. I'm sorry, our input graph. Thinking inventory. And we're going to come up here. We need to move this movement input to make a little bit of room. And then we're going to come in here and drag this out. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that yet either. That's also part of fixing an issue you haven't seen yet. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we're loading our inventory. So we're going to come in here and this here, all this, don't need it. No need to parse the inventory anymore. Don't need it. Make this smaller. We do still need this. And this is where you would match the name on bag. Okay, so what's happening here behind the scenes, because there is some hidden stuff, is that on get inventory, what's happening is that if this value, go into class defaults, under, find the value, inventory, should auto-load inventories to manage, okay? So if that's set to true, which we're going to set it to true, when you run this get inventory items on an inventory name that matches the name that's in the management console, instead of you having to manually handle it all and create these blueprint things and create all that monstrous UMG that was a mess, what's happening now is it's actually going to just load it behind the scenes for you in OWS and manage it for you and give you nice tools that you can work with it. So we also are now able to dump all of these here. So we can grab this whole thing. This is going to throw a few errors, but we'll fix it. So we're able to delete all of that as well. And we'll grab the rest of this stuff. And move it up. So we're cleaning up our blueprints. Okay. And so now all we need is this. All you got to do is just load this get inventory items, and you'll do this for each inventory that you need to load. And as long as that switch over here is on, you're good to go. That is going to create some stuff. In this video, we will not be completely cleaning out this old system, but it is going to throw some errors. So we're just going to come in here and gut these just enough. So I went into inventory item pickup, just found the one node that was red throwing an error. And we're just going to fix these just enough to get them to load. They were calling those functions. Later we'll come back and clean this up. That one didn't have anything. That one did. I think that's just those three. Okay. So our inventory is now loaded. And I think we're ready to give it a try and see this issue that I've been kind of alluding to. And I don't want to play at nighttime. So I'm going to go grab our thing here. 3600. Okay. So we're going to hit I, and there it is. It's going to load. Look at that. So now we can... Okay, do you see what's happening here? I'm trying to drag it, but it's rotating our camera and stopping me from dragging it. You see? So anyway, that's that issue that I've been referring to that we need to fix. So to do that, we're going to come back to our third-person character with abilities. And we want to stop our rotation. So we're going to right-click and do disable, get disable mouse rotation. And we're going to do not, because I like to use the true side of branches or if statements. It's just a convention. It would work fine with the false side as well. So now we're basically saying, hey, we've got this value, this disable mouse rotation, that we can use to stop the mouse from rotating. Okay, so that's cool. That's gonna get us toward what we want. So let's come over here, back to our third-person player controller. Remember, I had this left mouse button, and I want to create a function here. So hit function, toggle mouse rotation. And we are going to send in a boolean of, we're going to call it enable. And then we're going to get controlled pawn. You're going to cast to, so we only cast as far as we have to. And OWS character is actually where that disable mouse rotation is sitting, so that's all we had to cast to. And then we are going to do off enable, we're going to do not. And we're going to do set disable mouse rotation. Probably we could have just made this disable and then not had to do the not, but didn't think about that at the time. Okay, so we're going to go back to our input graph. Okay, there's some things it's mad about here. Oh, gotta connect those. So I forgot to connect those. The whole reason we were casting OWS character is so that we could create that as a target. There we go. Okay, so then what we want to do is we want to make sure when it's released that we always toggle the mouse rotation back. And this is assuming that your left mouse button is what you use to drag. And we'll do enable. And that should be good. There's a possibility this may interfere with our left mouse button if we're using it to swing our weapon. We'll have to keep an eye on that. There's this consume input here, and I don't know which will fire first, but once it hits it, it'll consume the input and anything downstream won't get the click. So keep that in mind if we run into that problem. Make sure we turn mouse rotation back on. Otherwise, without this, what could happen is that it could get out of sync and that we may not be able to spin our character anymore, which we don't want that. We could also potentially do this, maybe we don't do it on the left mouse button, dragging. Maybe we instead say, oh, you can't rotate while you're in inventory mode, but then after you turn off inventory mode, you can. Different ways we can do that. We'll have to play around with it and see what works. Okay. So let's see what that does. We got our inventory. Okay. Still not fixed. Yep. As you can see, it doesn't... still rotating us. Maybe we're not setting that value. Aha. So we turned it back off, but we were never setting it. So here's what we need to do for that. So we need to go back to our third-person player controller. And we need to go to our, this here is using our set UI mode. This is not a built-in function. This is a function we made. It's over here. Yep. And we've got our set, and let's see. Okay. We got to turn off this hide cursor during capture. This right here. That's problematic. And what that actually does is it makes it so that when you click, that it hides the cursor and puts you into rotate mode. This took me days to find this setting, and that's what was doing it. But we got to make sure we uncheck this hide cursor during capture when setting game in UI. And that'll let us keep our cursor and keep moving when we've clicked. Otherwise, if you remember, game in UI mode is the mode where like you click and then you can spin the camera. Okay, let's give it a try. That was a fun one to find. Okay, we're still rotating, but at least now I'm able to drag it. So that was the one that fixed that. So we still need to set that disable rotation so that we don't rotate, because I think that looks weird. Okay, So I gotta find that one. And let's see. I'm trying to think where that got set. I ran through the prep work for this yesterday, thinking I was going to do the video yesterday. That's usually not a good idea. So now I gotta try to remember. So I think what we can do here is I think I can try to find, I'm playing around on the other screen here, trying to find what is using that disable. So if I go back here, so this here, disable mouse rotation. Oh, look what we did. I don't know if that was the issue or not. Let me check. You guys have probably been screaming about it for the last 10 minutes. You forgot to connect the condition. Yep, let's see. I couldn't tell if it was just doing the pitch rotation. I thought it was doing both. Yeah, it's doing both. Okay. So that is not getting set. Just going to check the test project real quick. And it's working fine on the test project. Okay. They both have the exact same plugin, so it's not the plugin. Something needs to set that. Okay, I know what it is. So we need to go into our HUD and come down here, and we need to make it so that when the HUD is being clicked, that we can toggle that value. So what we want to do is in HUD, they're called hitboxes. That's like the spot where we click. Let me show that to you real quick, because you might find this interesting. So I'm going to bring up the inventory. I'm going to hit the tilde, show debug. No, wait. No, that's the wrong collision one. I'm trying to remember what the command is. Show debug hitbox. There we go. See? So you can see that it's keeping track of where we clicked. See, it leaves that out. The different ones you can drop it in. And so when those are clicked, it's going to fire this event in the HUD here called event hitbox clicked. And then there's going to be another one called event hitbox released. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to get owning player controller. The HUD-based one. And we're going to cast to third-person player controller. And this time when I copy the second one, I am going to remember to connect it. This here would give us that box name of what they clicked on. You saw the name there when I was doing show debug hitbox. And here's where we're going to use that function we made called toggle mouse, not toggle spellbook, toggle mouse rotation. And what we're going to do is we're going to disable it, leave it enable unchecked here, and turn it back on here. This sometimes does not fire correctly, which is the reason on that left mouse button that we have. And I gotta remember to connect that too. Gotta remember to connect all the wires. And that is why there is this code right here. Make sure we turn it back on. Otherwise what was happening is sometimes the hitbox thing was not releasing. It only released if you were inside the hitbox when you released it, and you could of course drag your cursor out. And then you would release it and it would say, no, you weren't inside a hitbox when you released, I'm not going to fire the event. And so that's where this left mouse button release comes in. And let's try it again. And now we can move our stuff around wherever we want. And no issues. Okay, so this thing automatically saves. That's one of the features I want to show you here. So remember we started this way, but I'm going to drag this here, and I'm going to drag this down, say here, right? So now I've got those. And if I hit stop, and I hit play again, there they are, saved wherever we last had them. So there are some issues I want to make you aware of that are going to be fixed soon, but I didn't want to delay this video any longer, get you guys started, is that right now you can do this. Oh no! Yeah, so there's still some issues with the ones that are larger than they should be. They let you do some things you shouldn't be allowed to do. Look at that too. That one causes that issue. Anyway, you're not supposed to put it past the edge. So I will be adding a new function to say, can I drop that item in that square? So there's some more stuff coming that will make that easier. But I think for now, we are good. So until next time, see ya.